Anthony Fauci sat in front of the United States Senate 2 weeks ago under subpoena and pleaded the Fifth Amendment over 100 times, which for a man who spent 3 years unable to get through an afternoon without finding a camera is a hell of a pivot. Now, I know I don't usually post on a Tuesday. This one couldn't wait. I went looking through something this week, and what I found was too good to sit on until Sunday. And I'm not doing a Fauci episode. Everyone's doing a Fauci episode. I want to do something else. Because a whole lot of you found this show in the last year or two, and if you've ever wondered whether I'm actually the right guy to be listening to, whether I'm somebody who read a headline this morning and got mad or someone who's been paying attention, that's a fair question. And I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to let you listen for yourself. On February 27th, 2022, I recorded the third episode I ever made. Not the third good one, the third one. Total. Audience of maybe 50, and 4 of them were related to me. And the whole thing was about Anthony Fauci. And the title, I'm reading you the real one, was America's Most Dangerous Cult Leader, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Leaves a Legacy of Millions Dead, Misinformation, and Mass Panic. That's not a title, that's a ransom note. I hadn't listened to it in years. Went back this week, and I'm not going to tell you I was right about everything because I wasn't, and parts of it are a little embarrassing. But there are 3 things in there I want you to hear, not because they make me look smart, because they'll tell you exactly how I think, which is the only thing that should decide whether you keep listening. Hang on. First this. If common sense has become part of your weekly routine, ChadParkerLaw.com is your home base. Every week you'll find something new, whether it's a latest book, a new editorial, the Daily News, the free Common Sense Conservative Manifesto, or everything else we're building together. And if you've got a question, an idea for an episode, or you think I completely missed the mark, call or text me at 252-CHAD-LAW. Some of the best conversations on this show start with your messages. All right, we'll get into today's episode right after these words.
When you need common sense, come see Chad Law, the boldest pundit you ever saw. His truth hits hard and the talk is real. Reality rules and that's the appeal. Spreading truth, yeah, that's his cause. Opening eyes, yeah, who needs applause? When you need common sense, then come see Chad. He lays down the law when the lies get bad. The media may think you're dense, so come where it's real with common sense.
I'm Chad Law, the last gay conservative, America's binary brother, the common sense extremist living in radical reality, broadcasting truth on the only rainbow that matters, the red, white, and blue rainbow. And this is Common Sense, the show where we read the fine print so you don't have to, where we bring receipts instead of outrage, where politics is just the starting point for something much bigger. This is the shelter for the politically homeless, where reality gets a vote, results matter, truth matters, common sense matters. So America, welcome home. First thing you should know about me, and it's the only thing I'd put on a resume, I read people. It's the one thing I've always been able to do. I can't do math. I can't remember a name. I have walked into a screen door as a grown adult. But put me in a room with someone for 10 minutes and I'll tell you exactly what they want, who they are, what they've been through. So in February of 2022, I'm watching Anthony Fauci on television like everyone else, and I say this.
The camera time on this guy was insane. And you could almost watch the God complex come out of him with every minute that he was on the camera. Seriously, his eyes twinkled. It was like he belonged. He loved the attention. He loved the media attention.
His eyes twinkled. I never met the man, no medical degree, no psychology degree, no business whatsoever doing that. I diagnosed a guy through a television. That's not journalism, that's astrology. Then 2 weeks ago, Rand Paul released 1,141 pages of Anthony Fauci's private diary. May 21st, 2022, he's writing about a front page story about himself. Here's what he types. Very flattering. His fame, his word, is explosive, really unimaginable. And he wrote, "It's not hyperbole to say that today he is the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable people in the world." He wrote that about himself, alone at a keyboard with nobody watching. And he misspelled hyperbole, which is how you know for a fact that nobody helped him. I said his eyes twinkled. He said he was the most famous man alive. One of us was being dramatic. And it goes on for 1,100 pages, which I read, which I will never get back. He logs his TV hits. He counts the stories about himself. There's a Tuesday in there where he's got the Washington Post, a New York Times column, and a profile in the Atlantic. And you can feel the man vibrating through the pages. Barbara Streisand emails him. He writes it down. He has a wonderful discussion with Julia Roberts, writes it down. Steph Curry, Tyra Banks. ABC called and asked if he wanted to do Dancing with the Stars. Wrote that down too. And somebody out there made a prayer medal of him, an actual saint medal, the kind you hang around your neck. It says, and I want to be precise here, Dr. Fauci, patron saint of public health. He kept a picture of it in his journal, folks. What was it I called this episode again? Here's where I want you to stop, though, because I know how that sounds. I'm not psychic. I don't have a gift. Nobody hands you a crystal ball with your podcast microphone. I knew it only because he had done it before. And that's the actual point. So listen to this and pay attention because you're going to think you know exactly where I'm going.
The bottom line is that the guy completely disallowed us from being able to have a second opinion. We're dealing with an illness, but we weren't allowed to have a second opinion. It was discouraged, it was frowned upon, and you were attacked for doing so. That's called medical integrity. You should suggest your patients get a second opinion. At the top clinics like Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, you don't have one person. Your entire case is looked at from every perspective, from a team of specialists, top in their field, who work together to diagnose and to treat areas of individual challenge and also systemic challenges. Tony Fauci could never work at any of those places. You have to play well with others, and you actually have to make decisions based on fact, not speculation. So when you come out and you deny an entire country's right to their second opinion, you have to be held accountable for the results. I mean, in Fauci's case, people getting kicked out of their homes. Doctors won't let them in to be seen. Groups targeted for spreading the virus. Thousands of people dead. Horrible clinical trials. Killer drugs. Did you think I was talking about COVID? See what I did there? No. 1983. HIV.
1983. That's it. That's why I wasn't guessing, folks. While the entire country was screaming at each other about 6 feet and cloth masks, I went and looked backwards. And what I found was that we had a warning, decades of it, sitting right there in the record where anyone could have gone and read it. Nobody did, because it was old and because it happened to people this country had already decided not to think about anymore. And what happened in 2020 was almost identical, just with a vastly better budget. Okay, now the part that matters, and the part I think every single mainstream take missed. Everybody made this about a man. Was Fauci good? Was Fauci bad? Should Fauci go to jail? And I went back and checked myself on this one this week because I assumed I'd asked for exactly that. But I didn't. Not once. 45 minutes, the angriest thing I have ever recorded, a title that reads like a ransom note, and I never once asked for that man to go to jail. Which surprised me, frankly. Episode 3, Chad was mad enough to ask for a lot. But I was smart enough to know we'd never see this guy go to jail. What I asked for is the very last thing I said in the whole episode. That we have to get a second opinion. Because the crime isn't a person. The crime is the practice. And it happened 3 times. Strike 1, May of 1983. Fauci publishes a piece raising the possibility that AIDS might spread through routine household contact, family contact, living in the same house. He hedged it, used possibility, if, may, and that's what he does. That's his specialty, and the media protects him. Because that hedge doesn't travel when it gets announced to the world. Same day, the UPI wire, household contact may transmit AIDS. Next morning, the Associated Press, does AIDS spread by routine contact? Same morning, the New York Times, family contact studied in transmitting AIDS. All three citing one man, Dr. Anthony Fauci. 6 weeks later, he tells the Baltimore Sun the entire idea is preposterous. Great, fantastic. Except by then, some kid in Toledo is already sleeping in his car and dying. You cannot unring a bell in the New York Times with an interview in the Baltimore Sun. He knows that. He knew that. Strike two, 1987, and almost nobody outside my community knows this one. There's an infection killing AIDS patients. It's a type of pneumonia. And doctors on the ground have an idea. Stop waiting for it. Give people the medicine before they get sick. Prevent it instead of fighting it. Fauci, running the NIAID, running the government's entire AIDS clinical trials operation, tells activists there's no data that works and that it might be dangerous. That's the government's answer. And in 1987, if you were a gay man in New York or San Francisco, the government's answer was the last word. Luckily, they didn't take it. A bunch of sick men and their own doctors, no federal money, no permission, no institution behind them, went and ran the study themselves in New York and in San Francisco. The treatment was approved in 1989, and the research that came after confirmed it. It worked. Fauci was wrong again. Devastatingly, certainly wrong. In this case, the second opinion was right. The government said there's no data and it might be dangerous. A group of dying men went and got the data, and they were right, and it took 2 years, and I would like someone to explain to me what those 2 years cost. Maybe in bodies. Fauci can't. And then strike three. You all lived through this one. October of 2020. 3 epidemiologists from Stanford, Oxford, and Harvard publishing a paper arguing the lockdowns were doing more damage than they were preventing. Protect the people actually at risk. Let everyone get back to their lives. Now, that is a scientific position. And there is exactly one way you're supposed to argue with a scientific position. You publish a better one. Oh no. Here's what happened instead. 4 days later, the director of the National Institutes of Health writes an email to Anthony Fauci. Not let's look at their data. Not let's put them on a stage with someone and go at it to debate. No. He writes that there needs to be a quick and devastating published takedown of it. Takedown. Like it's an opinion. And the word the director of the NIH uses for the 3 chaired professors at Stanford, Oxford, and Harvard is fringe. I have no idea what the non-fringe schools are. Apparently there's a list that nobody sent me. Oh, and the lead fringe epidemiologist? He later got nominated to run the National Institutes of Health. Fringe. So that's 3. 1983, 1987, and 2020. Every single time somebody had the better answer, and every single time Dr. Anthony Fauci did not allow them to say it out loud. And here's the thing that makes me insane about this, and it is not a Fauci thing. Wipe his name off of it completely. The second opinion is not a courtesy. It is not a nicety we extend to people who disagree with us because we're feeling generous that day. It is the entire method. Peer review, replication, a second set of eyes on the scan. That is science. That's the machine. It's the only reason any of it works at all. So when an institution blocks the second opinion, it hasn't made a bad call. It has switched off the one mechanism that catches bad calls. And it should have to answer for that every time, whoever it is, whatever letters are after their name, whichever party happens to be holding the microphone that year. That's the whole ask. That's all it ever was. And here's how I ended it 4.5 years ago.
I know the pandemic is winding down. I know mandates are coming to an end. And I know Fauci will soon be irrelevant. And that is exactly why I'm doing this episode. We cannot allow him to be irrelevant. We have to hold him accountable. We have to hold the politicians accountable. We have been lied to, and we have been taken advantage of, and more importantly, we've been put in a situation where we never had the opportunity to receive a second opinion. This is dictatorship and cult leadership at its finest. And moving forward, I hope that all of us get the strength to say no if this ever comes close to happening again.
February 27th, 2022. 4.5 years later, he's under subpoena in front of the United States Senate. And over 100 times to every question they ask him, he says the same sentence. On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer. And that is his right. It's in the Constitution. It's there for good reasons, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. It's just not an answer. We love to say that with great power comes great responsibility. Everyone's got that on a coffee mug. Nobody ever finishes the sentence. With great responsibility comes accountability. You do not get to sit in a room for 2 years typing into your own diary about how famous you are, how flattering it is, how unimaginable, how you're the most recognizable man on the planet, and then decide that explaining how you reached your own decisions is somehow beneath you. No, doesn't fly. Especially the mistakes. Especially the mistakes. That's where all the useful information is. Nobody ever learned a single thing from a decision that worked. We learn from our mistakes. And once again, he's robbing us of that learning. And this is the part I think the whole country forgot somewhere around 2020. A real scientist wants to be proven wrong. That is the actual job description. You put up an idea, you invite the entire world to take a swing at it, and if it's still standing afterward, now you've got something. A real doctor wants the second opinion. Go ask one. The good ones will tell you they sleep better when somebody else has read the chart. The ones who don't want any of it aren't doing science, they're doing public relations in a lab coat. So step back from the man. Honestly, he's got a pardon, he's got a lawyer, and he has said everything he is ever going to probably say. The question was never what happens to Anthony Fauci. The question is, how do we make sure that we, as a country, are never barred from a second opinion again? I don't have the whole answer to that, but I know where it starts. It starts by refusing to let anybody, any agency, any expert, any institution, anybody standing behind a podium to decide that the question itself is the problem. Which brings me to our Reagan Reminder, like always. May of 1988, Ronald Reagan is in Moscow, standing in front of a mural of the Bolshevik Revolution, explaining freedom to a room full of Soviet students. And he tells them that freedom is the right to put an idea forward, scoffed at by the experts, and watch it catch fire among the people. And then he says this. Freedom is the recognition that no single person, no single authority, and no single government has a monopoly on truth. A monopoly on truth. He said that to a room full of kids who had never been once permitted to question anything. I don't think it ever occurred to him that we'd need it read back to us. Apparently we do. Fauci had a monopoly on truth. We can never let that happen again. So that's who you're listening to. Guy who reads people, checks whether it's happened before, finds the pattern, and does not let go of a question just because everybody else got bored with it. The whole original episode is linked below, all 45 minutes, unedited, exactly the way it went out in February of 2022, including the 10 minutes at the top where I'm inexplicably furious about a woman in Starbucks. I'm not defending that. I'm just not hiding it either. Everything's at chadparkerlaw.com. And if you were there in the 80s and you've got a story I need to hear, call me, 252-CHAD-LAW. If this made you think, hand it to someone. Remember, if you see us, share us. That's the whole ask. I'm Chad Law, and this has been Common Sense. God bless you, President Reagan, and as always, may God save America.
Wonderful. It's marvelous that you should care for me. It's so marvelous that you should care for me. It's wonderful, it's marvelous.